Hi guys, thanks for being here today. Just to kind of give you just a 1 minute about the team so far. It's very, very evident, that the guys, worked hard this summer. They've come to camp in shape. We've practiced real well. We've got, a lot of veteran leadership on the defensive side, so I'm very fortunate, and we're very fortunate in that respect. And those guys have done a great job through the first 7 or 8 days here, setting the pace, setting the standard, the championship standard that Coach talks about. Looking forward to tonight. We've got a scrimmage tonight. 3 weeks from today, obviously, we open up against Stephen F. Austin. So tonight when the coaches aren't out there barking at them and you were off to the side and they've got to communicate with one another and do their thing, we'll learn a little bit more about our unit and our team tonight. So with that, any questions?
Who's ready to hand? We'll get a mic.
Coach Steve Robertson from Gene's page. Secondary-wise, how do you feel right now about your personnel and about their development this far?
Yeah, we've got a pretty good camp so far. I mean, we've got several players that have played a lot. With corner position, Cam Dantzler, Jamal Peters, and Chris Rayford have played a lot. And Tyler Williams and Mo Smitherman have had really good camps as well, and have put themselves in the mix, to compete for playing time. At safety of John Abram and Mark McLaurin, who are real veterans and create as good a tandem at safety as there probably is in the league, and maybe even greater than that. And we have to establish some depth there. But I've been pleased with Stephen Adekoke and C.J. Morgan. Have really stepped up and done a good job during camp. And London Kraft and Landon Guidry have done a good job as well. And the nickel position, Brian Cole, was a guy who redshirted last year and obviously transferred from Michigan. Played primarily on the offensive side of the ball. But he had a really good spring. He's picked it up right where he left off, and he's been really solid. But there's good competition at that nickel position, and that you got Capri Landers, right behind him, and Marcus Murphy there too. So, we feel like we've got some pretty good depth there. Everybody talks about the depth on the D line, but I think, we've got good depth, and we've got to continue to develop that depth over the next 3 weeks.
To piggyback on the safeties thing, that they were kind of all over the field last year. They were allowed to do a lot of different things. They kind of created a lot of havoc in the back end. How are you planning to use safeties, and will they have that kind of freedom to make offenses think?
When you say created havoc, I assume you mean in a good way, not a bad way.
Yeah.
I think when you look at last year's team, these guys. I've said it before. These guys, especially the older players like Mark, have had 5 defensive coordinators and really 4 or 5 safety coaches in the last several years. So I mean, it's only so many ways you can do things. But at the same time, I have veteran players back there who kind of. The negative is really a positive too, because they know the game. They can talk the game, and in the meeting room, it's not like talking to a high school kid. It's like talking to a veteran football player right there, and we have those type of discussions. So, those guys. I've said this before. When you talk about a defensive scheme, rather than recruit players to fit a scheme, you try to tailor the scheme and alter your scheme to what your players are capable of doing. So we're still in the process of identifying what the guys' strengths and weaknesses are, and that's kind of an ongoing thing. But to answer your question, I think John Abram and Mark McLaurin, Brian Cole are real playmakers, and I use the term interchangeable parts. They're versatile enough to play, different positions and do different things. And what is non-negotiable about our scheme, our style of play, if you will, is we want to be, it's built on, I always say, relentless pursuit and never-ending pressure. And pressure means bringing those guys and hopefully creating havoc. It's not, the SEC and where we want to get, it's not about being a bend but don't break unit. It's not about read and react. It's about attack. And that's those guys' mindset as well. So I think they've embraced that.
David Brown from the AP. Kind of building on, you mentioned the 4 or 5 defensive coordinators for some of these guys that they've played under. You've done this for a while. Have you ever encountered a veteran group that kind of knew so much about, just different types of defenses and terminology? Has it kind of been an interesting group to
Yeah,
lead?
it has. And, I found it to be very refreshing. I came, obviously, you come here and you don't know the guys, and you get to know them, and you hear about their personalities, you watch the film. It's been kind of a clean slate, but they're very, the blue-collar work ethic of our team is really, true. I think the kids on student athletes on our roster, both offensively and defensively, are tough, mentally tough. They're smart. they're smart, tough football players with a great work ethic, and that lends itself to success in the SEC, you know, the Big Ten or whatever conference. I've been in situations where I've been in situations where I've inherited defenses that didn't have that type of leadership and veteran presence. And you know, it's funny. I was just thinking about that the other day. The one that I did inherit that was very similar to this was my first defense at Penn State in 2014, and they encountered a little bit of the same situation in that, you know, you thought of maybe the continuity because Coach Paterno had been there so long, and then Bill O'Brien, and then Coach Franklin. So there wasn't, you know, there hadn't been a lot of head coaches, you know. But when I was there, they had in the fourth year players had 4 different defense. I was their 4th different defensive coordinators. They had Tom Bradley, and then they had Ted Roof, then they had John Butler, and then they had me. So it was sort of that same situation. So those guys could talk the game a little bit, and many of those players who are upperclassmen, you know, were really mature, and you could have those type of discussions with them, and they've gone on to great success at the next level. And maybe it's a good thing, but that defense went on to be the #1 defense in the country in run defense. So that's, you know, let's see what happens.
Coach Andy Lee with WTBA TV in Tupelo. I know he's a zygote as far as his football development is concerned. But Jet Johnson, what have you seen out of him so far?
What's zygote? I assume that means he's a young player?
Yeah.
I enjoy talking to Jet. Jet, you know, it's funny because the young players get a handful of reps at the end of each series of plays during the course of practice, and some of them come out on the field and they got big eyes and they're jumping around, and he kind of steps in there like a veteran. You know, the stage doesn't appear to be too big for him, and by no means is he ready, you know, for prime time. And today will be a big step in his development as he'll get some reps out there. But you know, he has an opportunity to learn behind Errol and Tim Washington, and you know, at that position also we have a junior college guy named Shamar Kilby-Lane. So we have good depth at that position. So it's not necessary that Jet, you know, come out and necessarily be, you know, Brian Urlacher today or anything along those lines. But you can tell that he gets the game of football. You can tell he's a good athlete. I mean, he's a guy who played football and basketball. He was a quarterback till he was in 9th or 10th grade. So he has a command. He has a presence about him, like any freshman. I'm quite sure when he gets his reps in practice, his heart's pounding. I told him when he gets out there, take a nice deep breath and do your thing. And thus far, he's done a good job.
Coach, it seems like the safety position is real susceptible to the targeting rule. How do you kind of coach the proper strike zone into your guys? How do you rep that out to avoid those penalties?
Well, I mean, you know, you hit it. I mean, you know, the game is not really like because of all the RPOs, because of the down the field pass game, you know, there's so many violent collisions that do occur in the game of football. And the first and most important thing, we're always studying best practices. You know, we're trying to, you know, like everybody else, take the head out of the game and teach techniques and fundamentals that are safe for our players and functional, you know, for the whole unit. So first thing we always talk to our guys about is taking your head out of tackling. You know, we're a shoulder tackling team. You know, we talk about tackling with the shoulder pad or the frontal part of the shoulder pads on the rise, sky in the eyes, seeing what you hit, not leading with the crown of your helmet right there. And then we talk about tackling with the chest on the rise in an upward moving, you know, fashion there. So you're using your squat and power clean muscles, ripping your arms up through the ball carrier, ripping appropriately right there, and making the tackle with your shoulder and your hips and your legs and things like that. So, you know, we do a tremendous amount of, you know, we start in very close quarters. You know, we do a lot of close quarters tackling, and then we broaden it out and expand it out. You know, and I think in those bang plays about the targeting piece, you know, it's really important that the guys understand going for the football. I mean, there's going to be collisions that occur, but we're not out there in any way, shape, or form. And you have to understand the tackling areas. Like I always use the term strike zone. You know, it's from the the chest or the numbers, you know, to the knees right there. And the other issue too that happens nowadays, and I've sort of studied this over the last couple of years, is because of that now you're seeing more shoulder injuries, labrum injuries. You know, you used to hear of a dislocated or separated shoulder. Now you hear the terms torn labrum. And I think because the guys, when they tackle, my crusade is when the guys tackle, they wrap their arms around a ball carrier rather than rip their arms up through a ball carrier. So, you know, we not only spend time teaching the best practices with regard to safety in the head, but trying to, you know, regard the best practices with regard to the, you know, shoulders and things along those lines. And we have a very step-by-step teaching progression with regard to our tackling that we teach our players.
Hey Coach, Tom Neville from WCBI here in Columbus. Another one of those young guys on defense, Marcus Murphy. Joe Moorhead had mentioned that he's playing some safety, put in some nickel spots. What have you seen from him in terms of his versatility, and where do you see him ultimately ending up on defense?
Yeah. He's obviously he's a local hero. He's been a state champion. He was a leader in his program. We're very happy that Marcus and Jet are part of our first class since we've been here. Marcus and I specifically coach him. He's played some free safety. He's primarily playing the nickel position. He's fast. He's competitive. He's tough. All those things. He's still learning a little bit about the game of football. On the defensive side, because he's primarily a high school quarterback where they'd snap the ball and he'd run. But you can see there's the old saying, I don't know what it is, but he's got it, and he's got it. He's a playmaker. He's taken the next step, because in the spring we'd always kind of joke in the film room that he would do everything wrong but end up making a play. And now he's taken the next step in that progression. He's trying to do everything right. And sometimes you got to take one step back to go 2 steps forward. So in his focus to try to do every step and everything mechanically and technically right, these first 7 or 8 days, he's been good. But he probably hasn't made as many plays as he did in the spring, or the plays he made were flash plays. But with the scrimmage tonight, my gut tells me that he's probably going to be a guy who makes a few plays out there. He's one of those guys who I think it's never the arena's never too big for him. I think he probably plays better when the coaches and stand behind him, telling him, make sure you're outside the line, make sure you're this, make sure you're that. And I think he's gonna, I think he's got a tremendously bright future in the long term. And I know at some point during the course of this year, he's going to make significant contributions to us on special teams, maybe as a return guy or covering kicks and punts, and get in the mix somewhere in the secondary, whether it's at nickel or safety.
You've been in this game for a long time, huh?
Jeez, you guys keep saying that.
Sorry. But where do Jeffrey Simmons and Montez Sweat rank in the tandems you've had on a defensive line, and what have you learned about them that you didn't see in film from last season?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I haven't coached a game yet, so it's got with these guys. So in that respect, it's hard to say. But you put it on the film, and it doesn't take long to identify who 94 and 9 are. Or you watch practice, or you watch them work out for that matter. Jeffrey's the alpha dog. He's really the undisputed leader of the defense and maybe the team in some ways too. Again, another local guy, Sip Boy, who he's really fun to coach. He practices hard, he competes hard. To be a great defensive team requires intensity, focus, attention to detail, and he has all those things. He's strong. He moves incredibly well for his size, and obviously, he's had a great career thus far. We have high expectations for him this year, and he's going to have a very bright future. Tez is a little bit, when I got here, I was a little concerned that he might make the decision to go to the next level. I think he made a wise decision in that I just don't think he's played enough football yet. And I think as a business investment, he made himself a lot of money probably by staying. Now, again, he's a first-team All-League returning player, and that's last year, and this is this year. But my observations in him have been he worked as hard this off-season as any player in the program as far as lifting, running. He's in great shape. He can rush the quarterback, and through 6 or 7 practices, he's probably been one of the most dominant players in the field. I think he's very driven to have a great year. He's got a positive attitude. He's got a good work ethic, and he's very, very, very competitive.
Coach, you mentioned Shamar Kilby-Lane didn't get the benefit of the spring practices. He's got to be a kind of a quick study. What have you seen from him? What are your expectations for him this fall?
Yeah, Shamar's done a good job actually. I came in. I didn't get to know him a lot during the recruiting process because the December 20th date came, the early signing date, and he kind of committed here without visiting at that point, and there wasn't a lot of film on him from junior college. I knew he went to Florida State and contributed a little bit early, mostly on special teams, and so I can't say. And then he didn't go through the spring, so it's not as if I had some real strong relationship with him. But I have enjoyed throughout the course of the summer and throughout the course of camp getting to know him. His story getting here is an interesting one, and I think football is important to him. And I think between Coach Lukabu and our staff, we're going to provide him the support to be successful, as a man, certainly as a student and as a player. And as a player, he's pretty good. he's got good instincts. You know, he's a little behind, a little bit like any of the first-year players because the terminology is a little bit new to him. But you can see that he's played at this level, whether it's at Florida State or in junior college, and you can see that he gets the game. You know, his issues also at the Florida State and junior college level were injuries. You know, so he's got to stay healthy. You know, so thus far during the course of practice, most of the drills have been non-tackling drills. You know, so we've got to keep him healthy. But I heard Coach Jones praising him, you know, in some type of kick coverage drill yesterday. And I know Coach Lukabu and myself have been very, very pleased with his progress so far. You guys just passing it back and forth.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk in this ring about Errol Thompson kind of growing into being an alpha dog, a signal caller kind of guy for this defense. Has he shown growth in that regard in these first 2 weeks of camp?
Yep. Yeah. Oh yeah. You know, I mean, you know, we just talked about the secondary and we talked about the D line. You know, the linebackers are kind of a little bit overlooked. I don't know that we have the depth at linebacker that maybe we have at some of those other positions, but what we have there are really pretty good players. I mean, Errol, you know, Leo, Lewis, and Willie Gay are all upper level SEC type players. And Errol, you know, we've challenged to take that role. He understands. He, Mark, and John do a lot of the communication piece for us, and I think he enjoys that part of it. He's a good study. You know, he's composed. He doesn't get rattled. You know, he stepped in, and you know, last year when was 11's name, Dez got hurt, and I thought he played really, you know, pretty well. I think he was the leading freshman tackler in the SEC or something like that. I think got all those stats now, but and to me, I think he's ready to take the next step. I think he's earned the respect of his teammates. You know, I'm not sure that he's an alpha dog like John Abram or Jeffrey Simmons are personality-wise, but when he gets in there, he's a good commander. He communicates clearly, he communicates loudly, and probably more importantly than that, once the ball turns over, you know, he can play the game pretty good. So he can thump you, you know, and he's a good tackler. He plays tackle to tackle. He plays sideline to sideline, and for a big guy, you know, he moves pretty good. He's a good blitzer too. Just back to him now.
What's the next step for this group of quarterbacks? What's the next
Corner?
step? Yeah, what's the next step in their development to be guys that are coming away with more interceptions as opposed to just passes broken up?
Well, you know, passes broken up are still good too.
Yeah.
But I mean, last year what they were asked to do a lot of times is they played a lot of press technique and what really amounts to almost man-to-man from a press alignment. Now it's this in zone defense, and they played a lot of what are called match concepts. You know, in those type of concepts, you're going to have bodies on bodies, but your vision, you know, really isn't on the quarterback. You know, so that, you know, there might be less completions or a lower completion percentage, but there might also be less interceptions. And we have combinations of both. And those guys have really done a great job embracing that. I think through the first 6 or 7 practices, we probably have 15, 16 interceptions. You know, I think we've had 4 one day, 3 several days. You know, which is, again, it's good for the defense, not good for the offense. Then other days are good for the offense and not good for the defense. But you know, Cam Dantzler has good hands and has played the ball. He's long, athletic, and is good. Jamal Peters the same way. He's played the ball well. You know, he's come away with a couple good interceptions. I think Tyler Williams had an interception or 2. So, you know, those guys are embracing the fact that they're in positions that just aren't press corner positions. You know, they're having vision on the quarterback, and Buck does a great job coaching those guys to break on the football and catch the ball. You know, Buck's one of the best to play the game and go attack it at the highest point and do those type of things. So, you know, there's a combination of all those things. And you know, I think when you recruit a corner, you know, you're looking for the same skills that Coach Getsy or the offensive staff are looking for in a receiver. You know, a guy who it looks like a shooting guard, has length and good ball skills, and those guys all have those.
Or just to clarify, by match concept, you mean pattern match?
Yeah. I mean, those guys were asked to play basically bump and run coverage almost on every snap last year. So when you reroute at the line of scrimmage, your back's turned to the quarterback a lot.
Yeah.
And unless you're Superman, I mean, you're not going to get a lot of intercept. You're doing your job within the framework of the package, and you did a very, very good job at that. You know, but a lot of times your back's turned to the ball and you're covering your player, but there's going to be less and less, you know, interceptions. You know, where we, in some of the things that we'll do is, you know, we'll zone out and we'll have more vision of the quarterback and have more sets of eyes looking at the quarterback. And in that case, there may be little windows, but theoretically you're seeing the ball a little bit better and breaking on those things. And we'll do both, and we do both. Come on, you guys, come on, you got some, come on.